Hey guys, Doc from the Gold Hog, and what are we doing today? Today I'm making a video and I'm going to break the video down for you before we actually go out to the field and show you what I'm doing. I'm making a few notes before I actually shoot this video or produce this video and edit it because I've got a lot to cover and I want to cover a few specific points. So let's talk about the video that's coming up. Number one, let's talk about the title. It ain't no virgin. We're going to talk about looking and exploring for virgin land or virgin grounds, and I'm going to show you how you can use nature and the forces of nature to sort of find some more virgin grounds. But at the same time, I'm going to give you a cautionary note and show you why that doesn't always apply. So you'll learn that as far as, is it a virgin or is it not a virgin? Next, we're going to be running the SuperHog as a 2.5-inch dredge. We were fighting thunderstorms all day. We didn't have a whole lot of time to dredge. We only got about 2 hours of dredging in, and I knew that. So I brought some fine gold with me. I brought sub 100 mesh down to 300 mesh. And I'm going to explain mesh sizes in just a second because a lot of people don't understand mesh sizes. So I keep talking mesh sizes, assuming that people know, and a lot of times they don't know. So I'm going to take a second to explain it. You're also going to hear me talk a little bit about proportional force. Proportional force is probably the most important video I think I will have made in 2 years because it controls everything we do in mining and in prospecting. It's sort of the basis for all the design and how we tune different things. That video is going to come out in a couple of weeks, I think, and I shot a little bit of the video that I'm going to use in that video today, so you're going to hear me talk about the proportional force a little bit, so you get a little sneak peek into the proportional force video too today. Now, the good thing about this dredging trip is that a whole bunch of stuff went wrong. We were using this modified dredge tube that was horrible. We pulled it off someone's old dredge and I welded a tip on it. Look, we had lots of jams. We had lots of plug ups. We had to shut down 6 times. We had all kinds of surging going on, which is what I wanted. That's what I really wanted to see, because what I wanted to see, start up and shut down, start up and shut down, start up and shut down. Does that gold actually migrate? We're looking for migration. That's one of the things we look for in our commercial ops. Same thing with surges. If you have water surges, what happens when you have water surges? Does that gold stay in place? So we wanted to test, I wanted to bring out 3 sections of the SuperHog and see what it did, what gold caught where. Now, if you are a little bit experienced in mining or prospecting, if you're running a dredge and you're trying to capture sub 100 mesh gold to 300 mesh gold, what would be an acceptable capture rate? To me, 95% capture rate would be phenomenal. So that's really what I was doing. I had the 3rd section on this of the SuperHog just to sort of see what wasn't getting caught in the 2 shorter sections. And it was about 95% of the sub 100 to 300 mesh gold was being caught up in those 2 upper sections. The final section caught about 5% of that super fine gold. That's a really good capture rate just in those 2 upper sections. It was about 1.5 grains, not grams, grains of gold in the very last section. The first 2 sections had just over 1.5 grams of that super fine gold. That's a great capture rate. So let's go in and let's talk real quickly about mesh sizes. People get confused, and it is a little bit confusing. But essentially, when people start talking about fine gold, they're going to talk about mesh sizes. And mesh sizes, you hear like 50 mesh, 100 mesh, 200 mesh, even some people talk about 300, 400 mesh. I kind of have to chuckle because when someone starts talking to me about 200 mesh gold, the first thing I do is ask them, do you have a 200 mesh screen? And 99% of them say, no, I don't. Well, I do. I have 200 mesh, 300 mesh, and 400 mesh screens. So I can tell you what it looks like. I've actually seen it. But the way that mesh is actually calculated, it's the strands per inch. So if you're looking at it, strands per inch going across one way, how many strands? So if I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, that's going to be 12 mesh. So if I have 12 strands, that's going to be 12 mesh. Of course, there's also going to be 12 strands running this way, but it's only about the single direction. So that would be 12 mesh screen. Let me grab a 12 mesh. I've got it up on the shelf. So there we go. That's a 12 mesh screen. Get right next to my face so you can see it. Dun, dun, dun. That's 12 mesh. 12 mesh screen. So for every inch, there's 12 wires running across. That's how it works. So when we start to think about that in your mind, now think about 50 mesh. That's 50 wires per inch running across. And I'm going to show you 50 mesh screen here too. Then go up to 100 mesh. When you get up to 100 mesh, you really can't even see through the stuff almost. Then you go to 200 mesh. So a lot of people see fine gold, but they don't really know what size fine gold is. And that's important. It's important for the testing that we do because we want to make sure we're talking about the right size gold. So that's how classifiers work. Now, I will tell you that when you get bigger, they typically don't go by strand size. And the reason why they don't go by strand size on the larger ones, like 1/2 inch and 1/4 inch, that's what you hear for the larger ones, is that if you measure an inch, you really got to have 5 wires within that inch to make 1/4 inch. Does that make sense? So if you count an inch across, you're really going to have technically 5 wires from inch to inch width, and that'll make 1/4 inch hole. So that'd be 1/4 inch classifier. You'd have to call this a 5 mesh, and people get confused. Same thing with 1/2 inch, same thing. You have to have 1/2 inch. You think, well, I only have 2 wires, but you actually have to have 3 wires, one on each side, one in the middle. So the bigger the screens, they usually refer to it in inch size. And when you start to go up, then they go to wire size. So you go up to 12 mesh, you go up to 12 mesh, 20 mesh, 50 mesh, 30 mesh, whatever you want to do, 100 mesh, that becomes wire size. The larger ones are going to go with the inch size. So real quickly, just to give you a little perspective on the size of gold, let me go ahead and let's talk about, let me show you the screen size. Okay, so see this gold here? You can see that that's pretty fine gold right there. Now, what most people don't understand is that's larger. Most of that is larger than 50 mesh. That's table salt. That's table salt. That's gold. That's probably bigger than 50 mesh right there. Won't go through a 50 mesh screen. That's a penny, and that's my finger. As an example. Here's 50 mesh, and there's table salt. So you understand, there's 50 wires per inch. So it really doesn't do me any good to show you 100 mesh and 200 mesh on camera because it doesn't pick up that well. But trust me, super, super fine stuff. 200 mesh and below is almost invisible to the human eye. You really got to get a jeweler's loupe and see it. You can see 200 mesh gold if you really look close, but that's starting to get small. So before we go out to the video real quick, just understand what I'm doing is I'm taking gold and I'm seeding at the beginning of the run. I'm going to seed in sub 100 mesh down to 300 mesh gold at the beginning of our run, the first 20 minutes or so. I was going to do a separate run and I decided just to leave it in. Let's leave it in here for the full 2 hours in dredge. Shutdown, surges, blah, 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 all kinds of problems. So let's just leave it in there and let's see what happens. Yes, I did test the tailings, saw very little gold in the tailings. The unit performed really well. Again, this is the SuperHog. We're running it with just 3 of the sections, not all 4 of the sections. 2.5 inch dredge. I'll probably even convert it in a couple of weeks to a 3 inch dredge and run it as a 3 inch because I think it can handle just a little bit more water. When it comes to proportional force, today in the video, I really wanted to show on proportional force. We're talking about the size of rocks, obstacles, friction. It's going to be a little confusing for you because you haven't seen the video because I haven't finished the proportional force video. When that video comes out, watch that video, watch that video. Anyways, I'll shut up. Let's go out to the field. Hey guys, Doc from the Gold Hog. And what are we doing today? Well, we're out here dredging. We're going to be talking about proportional force, and we're going to be talking about she ain't no virgin. I'll tell you what that means in just a minute. So today what we're doing is we're taking our SuperHog and we're breaking it down into a smaller unit. We don't have a lot of fine gold up in this area that we're working. There's a lot of coarse gold and larger gold. In Georgia doesn't have a bunch of super fine gold. So I'm going to we're going to do a short run, testing run, for about 30 minutes. And during that 30-minute run while we're dredging, I'm going to be feeding into the hole where they're dredging sub 100 mesh gold. I've got some of that testing stuff I did from the other week with the multi-sluice. So I'll be feeding in sub 100 mesh down to 200 and 300 mesh gold. That's the kind of stuff when you're dredging can be kind of hard to catch. So I'm going to show you the SuperHog running with a 3-section and a 2-section. We'll be doing that short test and I'll show you where the gold is placed, hopefully, within that unit. Because we're battling thunderstorms. I don't know what I'm going to be able to accomplish here today, to be honest. We actually came out here late thinking we were going to get storms. There's clouds all around, so stick with it. All right, so the ground I'm standing on, let's say, let me show you this ground I'm standing on. So let's say this is just ground, my truck's parked over here. I know at some point in time in history there was a creek under here, because there's a creek not too far away. So I want to get down to here, down to bedrock, but I know that I've probably got 12 feet down to bedrock. So I've got this ground and it's 12 feet down to bedrock. Well, I don't have an excavator, I don't have a backhoe. So how am I going to get down there? Well, I'm going to go over to what I call the virgin corner. Let me show you what I mean. When I talk about virgin corners, these are corners, a lot of times we don't go to outside bends, but today I'm going to show you how to work, especially if you have smaller equipment, how you can work what I call virgin corners, where the creek actually erodes the side of that and moves the creek and moves the creek and moves the creek. So technically speaking, we should be looking at virgin ground, because it takes a long time for that to happen. So let me show you what I mean. So here's the ground I'm standing on. I got all this dirt. Thousands and thousands of tons of dirt I gotta move. Well, if I'm smart, all I have to do is go right here. Because what's happened? Well, the creek or river has actually eroded this bank, and this actually used to be way over here. This bank was about 15, 20 feet over here about 3 or 4 years ago. Over that time and through the floods, this has eroded this bank. Of course, gold prospectors didn't do that, nature did that. Again, it was over here, and that creek has eroded this bank over here. Now that's a big drop. That's about 12 feet down. So here's the ground, you go all the way down to 12. There's probably another 24 inches down to bedrock, 15 to 24 inches I'm guessing. So you go all that way down to bedrock. Well, if we use this virgin corner, as I call it, it's exposing new ground, exposing new ground. But I'm gonna show you something today that sometimes what looks like a virgin isn't going to be a virgin, and I'll go over that too. Hey guys, so the guys are sitting up right behind me in the creek. Here's that drop I'm talking about, and you've got years and years and years and years and years and years of different layers of sediment and rocks. This is stuff that's happened over thousands of years, probably some of it, but more than likely hundreds of years, and I'm going to show you why in a minute. Creeks move. We went over this before and we did this in the class. Creeks move a huge amount. You don't understand that a creek can move in an easy quarter of a mile where its range is, because we were over at the Loud Mine and we showed where the creek was, and then we were 100 yards away or 200 yards away and they're excavating river gravels nowhere near the creek. But creeks move a lot. So I'm going to take the camera over. I'm going to show you some of these different levels of soil. But what's really cool is I want you to be able to see all this different, what's going on here. We've got a lot of silt and clays, then it comes down to sort of river gravels here. Now, if you were mining, this would be obviously, this would be your pay layer right here. You can see you've got overburden, overburden, overburden gravels, and this is where you would start. You would start on those gravels, and then the best pay would be down on the bedrock down here. You can see, and a lot of times you'll have smaller rocks, and the rocks get bigger and bigger and bigger. So let me grab the camera so you can see. Here's the surface. We've got lots of fines, a little bit of rock in there. Then we come down, we get a little bit more gravel, still lots of silt. And then we come down and we start to see this. And you can see that we've got sort of a pay layer developing here. Really hard embedded stuff. So this at some point was a creek bed. That come down over here. And you can see now, you can see the current creek bed. Now, in the majority of states where you prospect, it's illegal to work, dig, or dredge this, because this is a supporting embankment. This is actually a bank. You're not allowed to dredge into this bank. Where the water starts, stay about a foot away from it, is where you can actually work. So you can work this creek all the way up to about a foot here. Now, if this was, as an example, if this were to dry up and this was, this area in here was actually dry, that like an island, or further up where you have creek gravels up here, that's not the actual bank. The supporting bank of the creek is going to be this right here. It would not be out here in the middle. So if this were to dry up, that's not a bank, This is the supporting bank that holds the waterway in place, so you cannot dredge or work into this. That is just very cool, just to see all that material here. So I keep talking about she ain't no virgin. Why do I say she ain't no virgin? Well, look at the stuff behind me, okay? So you've got 12 feet of material here. You've got roots in here that are hundreds of years old. Well, I'm going to show you something real quick. Let me go up here so I don't get all nasty and muddy and run into some snakes. This right here was covered up by this tall bank here, was way over there up till a few years ago. Storms have eroded it over time, and it has come over and come over. This bank has moved all this way. Trust me, I know. Look what was underneath. This is some sort of old sluice system. We've looked at it probably from, we're guessing, the 1800s. It's an old kind of gold sluice system that may have been up on a hill and got washed away or something. But this is sitting under all that dirt. So don't forget, this was up here, coming all the way out here to about there. Once it eroded away, that's what it uncovered. So I know for a fact at some point that this ground right here, there had exposure to it. Something was here, something was actually covering this up. We've got a man-made sort of sluice system here. You can see it. I've actually got, it's a split rail system where it's split in half over here. I've got these planks right here, these split planks here. And what's really cool about this is these split boards actually have bark left on them, which is kind of cool. They're preserved that well. So anyways, that's pretty cool. That just shows you that, hey, it may be a couple hundred years old, but at some point, this area was covered way back up. And it shows you how those creeks move back and forth. Still, there should be decent gold here. Nobody was in here back in the 1800s with dredges, with hand dredges or small dredges or effective dredges. A lot of the work here was done with hydraulic mining. They were blasting and running hydraulic systems back here. They missed a lot of the gold in here. So we should still find some gold in here. Plus, I've been dredging over in this corner and it's pretty decent. There's actually a bedrock fracture down here. The bedrock, there's a deep hole back over here, and the bedrock is actually, there's some kind of seismic event. The bedrock is actually fractured way down in this corner, and the bedrock is actually split. So one piece is here, the other piece is like up here. There's a split in the bedrock here. And there's decent gold up in here. Nothing huge, you know, come down here and get rich. It's not gonna happen, but there's a fair amount of gold. So we'll see what happens. So let's talk about our setup today. Today, we've got the SuperHog. I wanted to run it just to here, which is just like a big, kind of like a big raptor, oversized raptor. But the guys wanted me to take that with me because I'm going to do some testing. I've got it hooked up into the header box. This is an adapter, a regular 2.5-inch adapter. This is something I wanted to try today. You can see this rope here, and watch the hose. See the hose going up and down? It has a little bit of flexibility based on what's going on with the dredge. But I want to be able to untie that, and now I can change where that water hits in my header box. I can change the proportional force in here. But that way, almost all my water is going down into my ear. I have very little water coming off here. Everything's going all down in my sluice right here. That goes out 2.5-inch hose. We're using a modified power jet. This is an old jet for an old dredge, and we welded on a piece here. And then that just goes to a tip that we're using. 1.5-inch pressure hose to a 2-inch high pressure pump, northern tool. And of course, whenever you use one of these pumps, you always want to have a fine screen on it. Again, that's like 1/16-inch screen around that. These things hate sand. Not gravel, they hate sand. So that's where we are today. And what I'm going to start to do is I'm going to start to throw in a little bit of fine gold into his hole, and we'll run it through the system. See what happens. Pretty cool setup, though. Hey guys, so what I've got is I've got some of this black sand with this really fine 100 to 300 mesh gold, we'll say, inside of it. And while he's dredging, I'm going to put a little bit into that hole. We don't have a lot of fine gold here, especially not in this spot. So what I did was I grabbed handful by handful, and we were working regular material into the nozzle while I was putting little handfuls in there. I wanted to mix it all up. Now we're going to sit here, we're going to run. See what happens. So let me get a pan, I'll test pan and see if any came out the back end while I'm here. Alrighty, so we're talking about proportional force. Works in the header box. I need to set this so that everything will come out of my box. Now, here's the difference. Look how violent that is. See how violent, deep water. See what's going on there? All of a sudden, bam, it changes. Look how smooth this is. Then it changes again. So we start here, very violent, deep water, change the proportional force by widening it out, putting in a different friction level, another friction level, and you'll see rocks that get held up here will not get held up here because we're lowering the obstructions and we're lowering the friction on the bottom. So a rock that'll struggle to get through here will roll right off of here. Is that clear? So now you understand. We have real aggressive matting up here, but all the rocks are going over because the water's deep and fast. We can go to a little bit more aggressive here because our water's a lot shallower, so we have to lower the obstructions. Here, we have no obstructions. Everything just rolls over this. The only problem with use was once you use just that, because we have to have some type of flow interruption. We want that cutting surface at some point in here. So that's why we want to mix the mat. That's so important to what we do. Yes, you can use just this mat here, but if you want to change something, you want to change up, change the proportional force, change the matting surface, change it all up. So you can see what happens when you get a clog in there. Now she's undone. That's one of your issues with dredging. It's a little crazy. Jet tube. The nice thing about a jet tube is, well, it gets clogged, but if they have one of the snap locks on it, kind of why I use that snap off. That's crazy too. We can take an iron, we can take a rod down there, put it back in, and then snap it closed. Hey guys, so what we're going to do, we shut down, we've been dredging for 2 hours almost. It's almost 1:30. So close to close to 2 hours. At the very beginning of this, we put in that fine gold. We've had 5 times where we've had to shut down. We've had numerous clogs. That's a day of dredging. So let's see what we're gonna do. What I'm gonna do is we're gonna clean each one of these mat sections out, and I'm gonna put it into a little tub, and I'm actually gonna take it home. So we've got a threat of thunderstorms all day today. I don't want to get stuck out here on this corner, which is a storm corner that gets washed out. I don't want to get stuck out here. We're kind of rolling the dice. Break it down, take it back. Everything looks pretty good. Matter of fact, I may even, let me just shoot the mats real quick. So I've got razorback and downdraft. That's what I want to see. Got a little bit of rock sitting here. There is, in mine, I've got a piece of talon up here, so you can see what happens. You'll have larger rocks. Again, the more obstacles that you have, the more larger rocks you'll have. They struggle to get over. You can see you've got rocks in here. But then when you come down here where you have no obstacles, now this is UR and bedrock, but you can see that fine black sand in there. There's really fine black sand in that bedrock. That's what I want to see. In the UR mat, see that UR mat? That looks good. It's about half full, maybe. Same thing. I mean, this bedrock mat right here looks really good. I really like the look of that. See that black sand in there? That's a good looking bedrock mat. And what's funny is with bedrock, this one will be a little more full, this will be less full, and this will be less full. So we'll see what happens. Now when I come up here, same thing. Again, we keep talking about this proportional force, but look at the rocks. See how the rocks sort of struggle on this because there's more obstacles in here, so I have to have a greater force to get these rocks to move. So what'll be interesting to see is, do I have any big gold in here? I don't know. We're gonna break it down, take it home. Hey guys, I figured I'd go ahead and shoot this. We just pulled the top mat out of here, and I want to show you what it kind of looks like. So the reverse ramp riffle sits right here, and you can see what happens. You get this deadening pool. Got moss here. Underneath the moss, you lift it up, and you've got mat underneath the moss. And you'll have like a nasty, nasty bunch of black sand in there. But you can see again, you know, we've been talking about proportional force, but look how these rocks kind of get hung up in here. Same thing, you will never see these kind of rocks when you shut down here on that UR mat and bedrock. Because of what? Because of obstacles and flow interruption, the larger riffles we got up here. At the same time, we're still going to see fine gold. Guarantee you, if I were to clean it right now, I'd see fine gold sitting in like these little grooves here, in that pre-ramp, and we'll find lots of fine gold up in here in that deadening pool. Okay guys, I just figured here's the top of the mat. Reverse ramp riffle sits here. And as I rinse this down, I don't know if you'll be able to see it or not, but I've got a bunch of fine gold sitting right in there. Right in that little groove there, I got a bunch of fine gold. All the way across this. And it's funny, that very first, right there, that very first groove, after that, look at that. I mean, it's just loaded, even up in here, right in there, Brandon, look at that. See it right there?
Yeah. It's fine.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, right at my fingertip, you can probably see a bunch of fine gold. That's in that pre-ramp. Hey guys, it's actually the next morning, and just arrived back home, and I'm unloading the truck. And while I'm doing that, I figured I'd show you the 3 different tubs with the 3 different sluices and what we got out of each of the sluices. Pretty cool. So here's the 3rd sluice. You can see I've got these all in tubs. I've got them marked. This is the bedrock and UR. This is the razorback and downdraft. That's the 2nd sluice. And here's the top sluice. Now the top sluice contains the reverse ramp riffle, and the aggressive. And you can see that there's quite a bit more. But I wanted to show you the three different sluices. So you got sort of fine material in there. You got some little bit larger rocks in there. And then here, there's actually some larger rocks and crap. So anyways, I'm going to sort of process these out separately just so you can see what gold was caught where and how the different exchange rates and the different matting and different proportional flows affect what gets caught where. All right, the last mat, which is bedrock and UR, which is all zero turbulence. It's just basically a drop ramp, drop riffle kind of situation. Here are the cons from it. And one thing you'll notice and you'll see about this is there is a huge amount, as the politicians would say, there's a huge amount of superfine black sand. This is pretty heavy. This is about 4 or 5 pounds. It's just a lot of fine black sand in here, which is what I expect to see. So I've got the multi-sluice set up today. This is kind of how what I'll be doing. I've got the new system. If you haven't tried one of these little plugs yet, get one of those plugs. This is that new restricted flow procedure we just started doing a few weeks ago. And normally I would classify down to 50 mesh. I'm just going to classify down to 12 mesh today and run it through this. This setup is designed to capture superfines, like in the 100 to 200 mesh range. With this flow setting and this pitch setting. It's a new thing that we're working on playing with the multi-sluice. So I'm going to take this and run it through, and I'll also take the other columns and run them through here too. Again, this will take me 10 minutes to clean my columns. It'll be fun. Hey guys, so if you haven't seen this new setup with the multi-sluice, if you haven't seen this new restricted flow setup with the multi-sluice, it's pretty cool. We put in a special reducer plug now inside of it, in addition to the 1100 plug. Again, dealing with proportional force. But all I'm going to do, here's one little tip for you when you're working, whenever you're doing controlled testing. Stop and think. Is my water clean? Is my catch tub in place? Is there anything that's going to skew this test? Does the bilge pump hose have gold in it? Does anything have gold in it? And you got to stop. I always got to stop. One bad little mistake like that will ruin the whole test. This isn't super controlled test, but I went through and I stopped and I went through and I looked at everything that I was doing. Is that pan clean? Does that pan have any gold in it? Does the spoon clean? Does the spoon have any gold in it? What have I got? Just stop and think when you're doing this kind of stuff. So I'll just run it through real quick. Yeah. Keep my pan right here so that if it drifts right back into the pan. Make sure it's perfectly level. I'm just going to run it through. This will take me about 5 minutes. All right, 5 minutes, 3 minutes, 4 minutes, I'm done. Shut it off. And I really don't see a whole lot of gold like I would normally see. So it's probably just going to be real superfines in there. You know, normally when we would shut down, we'd see lines of gold in here, but I'm really not seeing much at all. So let me throw this into a pan and see what we got. Okay, so here is number 3 mat, the last mat, which is the bedrock and UR. And you are not, I'll tell you right now, you're not going to be able to see the gold because it is, majority of this gold is 150 to 200, 250 mesh gold. But I mean, there's gold over here that you can barely even see. But there's gold all over in here that you really can't even see down in here. And you can see the fine black sands in here too. So when I see this fine black sand that's 100 mesh, black sand and smaller, and I see this fine gold up in here, I know that that mat's doing a good job for me. That's it. That's all the gold right there. I mean, that's not even... That's just a couple of grains, really. Hey guys, I did want to show you this. This still amazes me with that new little system we've come up with. But here, I panned out all the tailings from that run I just did, and there's just not a single speck of gold left, even with all this fine black sand. I mean, I can go up here, I can work it, there's just nothing in here, which really surprises me, to be honest. That's just amazing to me. All that fine black sand and all the gold is taken out. Now, I only had, you know, maybe a cup or two of cons, but still, that's just amazing. You can strip out all that super fine 100, 200 mesh gold out of there that quickly. Hey guys, let me show you a little trick that I'm doing now. I'm running the multi-sluice with the little insert, the little 9/32 insert in it. And here's a little trick. If you want to break apart your sluices, or if you don't have a lot of cons, this little trick is working out really well for me. All I'm doing is I'm taking 2 gold pans, and I've got a 12 mesh string, and I'm just filling it both up with water, and that's all the plus 12. And then what I'm doing is I'm just putting this into a pan, taking that, putting that into a pan, and now I can just pan. I've got my plus 12 mesh sitting here in my sub. I can run this through the multi-sluice. This will only take me a second to pan out. Bring it over to the deep end. And so now what I'm doing, it's real quick. Now I can just go ahead and just look through this real quick. Doesn't take me long. Again, this is all the plus 12 mesh. Nothing bigger than 12. Just a little trick. Pretty quick. All right. I like that little trick of classifying down in the gold pan itself. But I just ran, this is the second mat, which is Razorback and Downdraft. And you can see, now we're starting to see gold. Now I'm starting to see it show up. Now you can see what I'm talking about. That's that super fine stuff. That's that 100 to 200 mesh. That's from the second mat in the SuperHog, which is Razorback and Downdraft. I still think this is really cool every time I do it. But you can see as I wash this down, I'm just sort of letting the black sands come out of it. Look at that fine gold in there. Look at that right there. Look at those 2 lines. Now, is that cool or what? That is just too cool. And of course, that's up at the top of the mat. That's the top of the mat right here, and it goes down, goes down, goes down. And we'll see less and less, but you'll still have gold all the way down because we're reducing. That's all we care about. We'll start to see less and less down here. Okay, so here's the last mat that we did. That was mat number 3. There's maybe a grain or 2 of gold in there. Here's the mat number 2, the Razorback and Downdraft. That looks like that's probably half a gram maybe in there. Again, super fine stuff. If I can get it to spread out. Very fine stuff. Okay, so here we have it. Here's the results. This is from the SuperHog dredging, approximately 3 hours with the added gold in it. The gold we added was all sub 100 mesh. So anything larger than 100 mesh is actually going to be the gold we found while dredging, which wasn't much in this area. Pretty barren area. Like we said, it's not virgin ground, obviously. And results really what I kind of expected. I have a couple of grains on the last mat. This is really super fun stuff. On the second section, which is all razorback and downdraft, you can see that. I would say there's probably maybe half a gram there. And then on here, you can see that's the number 1 section. We've got a few larger pieces showing up that are above 100. That's the kind of stuff we found. But again, what's amazing is, look at the fine gold in that number 1 section. That's pretty cool. So you got 1, 2, and 3. Pretty good results. And what's kind of the lesson that we're kind of take away from this a little bit? Using proportional force we're talking about, we can actually trick that upper section, create zones that'll capture that fine gold, even though through the use of different mattings. Even though the water is deeper, it's faster, it's more aggressive, we can change the matting in there. But also if we had any large gold show up, it's almost always in that first section if we find large gold pickers or nuggets. Anyways, bug zooming around me. Dr. Gold Hog, it's too hot to do anything else, so I'm going inside having a beer. See ya.